Welcome back to Ask the Agronomist. I'm Laura Cunningham, here with Phil Long. Here we are on October 6th. We've heard lots of reports of corn coming in at 16% moisture already this early in October. So it's a really great time to talk about stalks.
Yeah, it definitely is. Especially as early as we are in the harvest season, it seems like we shouldn't be having to deal with this, but let's take a little trip down memory lane. This hasn't been the easiest of years, and obviously, depending on where you're at, Latham Country is pretty far and wide, but a good chunk of Latham Country is still under, drought or some symptoms of drought, even from last year. So we started the season with tough conditions, went through most of the season with dry conditions, which drought does not help anything, especially when it comes to late season stalk integrity and stalk health. One of those things I always think about, especially when it comes to stalk health, is fertility. And when you don't have water, you're not going to get as much nitrogen in the plant. Potassium is huge when it comes to the strength of the stalk. And if you have an imbalance, it's going to cause worse issues. So, we had just a lot of conditions that add up to poor stalk quality. Some of those late season things, anything that detracts from the photosynthetic ability of the plant, the leaf area. So if you had any diseases on the plant, it's going to slow down what the plant can do. Anytime we have cloudy conditions, I think back, we had a lot of smoke, especially up north, a lot of smoky conditions. Any cloudy or anything that keeps the sun from hitting the leaves is going to slow down that photosynthesis and require the plant to take nutrients from somewhere to fill out the ear. So what typically happens, especially we always talk about this, modern genetics, our modern corn hybrids do it really well, but they want to fill that potential kernels out. They want to do the best they can when it gets late season. So a lot of times what gets compromised is a stalk. And like you said, here we are, early October. It seems weird, but we're dealing with 15-16% moisture corn, even lower, which does not lend itself very well to good quality stalks. We got a lot of things going against us in this harvest season that means we really need to keep an eye on it and be watching for harvesting early.
Okay, so when we're going out into the field, maybe evaluating which fields to go to next for harvest, how do we evaluate stalk quality and stalk rot?
Yeah, so I've got a couple examples here. And the first thing I look at, the easiest thing, and I did, you can see I did pull the leaves back, tore the sheaths off of it, but look at the lower stalk. So you can see yours versus mine here, you can see the green right off the bat. And I've noticed this with a lot of fields this fall. They had fungicide on them. We talk about this a lot, and I know we did a fungicide video where I talked about the health component of fungicides. And from the looks of it, it's paying off, especially in terms of standability. And that you can see it typically in the fields that had fungicide. You're going to see that green tissue still in the lower stalk, and that's a good thing. That means it's strong. I split both these open, and you'll see a good tissue in there. It's not soft and degraded like this one is. If you split it open, having that green on there is going to keep it standing upright. So, when we get a plant like this, you see it out in the field. Tear back those leaves if there are any down that low, and you'll see that it's kind of a brown, straw-colored kind of appearance, and we've got some dark discoloration happening here too. That's not a good sign. So the first thing I do, and especially the easiest thing as you're walking through the field, is push on some plants, or just open your shoulders up and knock them as you're going by. And if you can break those off, in 10-15 degrees, not pushing them too far, just a little ways out, you have problems. You can also bend down, and in this case, you're going to feel a mushy stalk, doing the pinch test, at least the first 3 nodes up from the ground. That's not a good sign. So it's made its way well up into the stalk at this point. So we definitely have a field or a scenario where if you're seeing a lot of this kind of stalks out in your field, you need to get on it quickly, because I'm not focusing on the ear here today, but this is essentially what the plant looked like when it came out of the field. The top was busted off, which wouldn't be a huge concern, but it's got a nice ear on it. And the next thing that's going to happen is we drop below 16, 15, 14% moisture on corn, which has happened, it seems like 2 years in a row now. The stalk's going to get weak, and then that ear shank's going to get weak, and then we could potentially see ears dropping off the plant. So, this plant went through a lot this season. We had pretty much the most severe drought in this part of the state. still filled out really well, filled to the tip, and that's what I'm seeing in a lot of cases. So, you know, if it filled out that well, and then it's got poor stalks, you know that it probably cannibalized some of that to finish off that ear, which is that's what we select for, you know, good yield. And that's part of what comes with good yield is, you know, those breeders that are looking for things out in the field, and yield is the top thing we look for a lot of times. That's what's going to be compromised. They do everything they can to remobilize the nutrients, and that's where it comes from. The lower stalk goes up into the ear, and then we end up with pathogens getting in the lower part of the ear. So lower part of the stalk, excuse me. But so this stalk rot here looks to be like fusarium. There's a lot of fusarium's a very common one. Anthracnose is very common too. You'll see dark blotches on the stem with anthracnose. If it's pink, it's gibberella. That's an easy one. But really the biggest thing is going out and seeing if it's out in your field. If you have stalk rot, you need to prioritize it. No matter what kind of stalk rot it is, it's important to understand what it is so we can plan for later. But right now we're just trying to evaluate what's going on and how much of it's out there.
Okay, so let's talk about the moisture side. We mentioned, now they're already coming in at 16%. Realistically, how much time, what are we looking at moisture-wise?
Yeah, so I mean, typically when I think about when corn hits physiological maturity or hits that, it finalizes the black layer, so forms that black layer on the tip of the kernel there. That's typically around 28-30% moisture, depending on how long it takes to form. But we've had really hot temperatures, so you know this time of the year I would think we'd be seeing a half a point, maybe 3/4 of a point per day. We're still seeing probably a point per day dry down. So one moisture percentage point per day. We had, I know at least here in central Iowa, most of Iowa had temperatures in the 80s and 90s the last couple weeks. We're still looking at them this week. So lots of heat and dry conditions. You can feel it in the air when it's good, you know, soybean combining, you can feel that, you know, it's good corn drying as well. So it's not going to take long, you know, a couple days to dry it down. And I'm just really surprised that we're already seeing, you know, under 15% moisture out in the field. I mean, we get paid typically you dry it down to 15%. So if you're seeing moistures below that, you're losing money. You know, so we always encourage people to harvest it sooner. You know, I would say typically, you know, before 18% is nice, and a lot of people get it before that, which is great. But once you start getting below 18%, you know, things really start to get compromised. You can't expect a whole lot. The plant at that point is dead. The roots have long, you know, stopped growing. Everything has essentially stopped growing. So it's the Mother Nature is taking over one way or another, whether it's a stalk rot, you know, or saprophytic fungi, one way or another. It's going to start degrading the stalk when it's this dry.
Okay. Any last thoughts or reminders that you want to leave with everybody before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I think, you know, this is a very important topic right now. Obviously, it's everywhere. I've noticed a lot of fields, they get opened up, and I think, oh, I drive by them a lot, and they look good, and then they open them up, and you see, you know, the edges are always the best or the strongest, you know, and sometimes even that rind strength's a little bit stronger, whatever it is, it's holding those plants up, and they open the field up, and you see the plants falling down. So, you know, one thing I'd say is, I know we don't like to get out of our combines this time of the year, but make note, first of all, whether it's the stalk or the roots. We had a lot of corn rootworm this year, so make sure it's not a root lodging issue. Make sure it's actually the stalks, so it's worth it to get out and check that, because that'll help you out planning for next year in terms of whether it's a stalk rot or corn rootworm issue. And then I'd also say prioritize those fields that didn't have a fungicide, that have high planting populations. If you do push planting populations, that would be a key. I would say make sure high planting populations. I give you a great example on our farm here. We actually, I didn't think it was happening, but I planted about soybean population. The monitor did something goofy that day, whatever it was, and planted it over 100,000, and all that corn is flat. So I mean, it's a stress thing. It's going to affect how you know, that corn matures, and it's definitely lost everything it's got. So higher planting populations and no fungicide definitely should kind of help you narrow some of the options down. And planning for next year, we've got some great traits. Obviously, you know, if you look in our book, the corn on corn ratings, we do have some hybrids with the anthracnose stalk rot trait in them. Just a lot of different things. You need to talk to your dealer, Latham representative, about that. But yeah, there's a lot of things to think about, but the stalk rot issue right now is going to get worse. So pay attention as you're going out there, and maybe even send somebody else to go prioritize how you're running fields. Don't base it just on maturity, you know, base it on how the field looks, and go further into the field than just the road.
All right, sounds good. Great tips today, Phil. Looks to be a really busy week out in Latham Country for harvest. Stay safe, everyone. Take a beat to enjoy it as well. Enjoy each other as you're bringing in your harvest for the year. So we'll be back next week with another topic.